The alert came at 3 in the morning. Ship time. Jake woke instantly as the Guardian network screamed a warning through his mind. Somewhere in the Kepler sector, reality was tearing apart. He rolled out of bed in his quarters aboard the Eternal Vigil and was dressed within minutes. Lisa met him in the corridor, already carrying her emergency equipment pack. "How bad is it?" she asked as they hurried toward the command center. "Bad," Jake replied, his silver hair catching the emergency lighting. "The network is detecting massive space-time distortions. Something big is coming through from dark space." They reached the command center to find Commander Vextar already at his station, coordinating with coalition forces throughout the sector. The main display showed a star map with red warning zones spreading like a disease. 3 Devourer scouts have broken through near the Kepler 438 system, Vextar reported. "They're larger than the ones we fought before, much larger." Jake connected his mind to the Guardian network, feeling the other ships responding across the galaxy. But something was wrong. He could sense hesitation, confusion from some of the human crews. "What's the problem?" he asked the network. The answer came from Captain Sarah Mitchell, commanding the Guardian ship Starfire near the Vega colonies. "Jake, we're getting interference from Coalition Command. They're ordering all Guardian ships to hold position and wait for approval before engaging." Jake felt anger flare through the network. The Devourers were already consuming everything in their path, and the Coalition wanted to debate response. "Protocols? Put me through to Chancellor Morvex," Jake ordered. The communication system crackled to life, showing the old Voidwalker's shimmering form. Behind him, Jake could see the emergency session of the Galactic Council in heated debate. "Morrison," the Chancellor said, "we are aware of the situation. The Council is discussing the appropriate response." "While you're discussing, those things are eating entire star systems," Jake replied, not bothering to hide his frustration. "The Guardian ships can stop them, but only if we act now." "The new tribunal you proposed has not yet been established," Chancellor Morvex said. "Some council members question whether humanity should make unilateral decisions about when to deploy the Guardian fleet." Through the network, Jake could feel the Devourers growing stronger as they fed. Each ship they consumed made them larger and more dangerous. Every minute of delay meant more lives lost. "Sir, with respect, this is exactly why the Guardian ships exist," Jake said. "The architects built them to respond instantly to Devourer attacks. Every second we wait, the enemy gets stronger." Ambassador Krex appeared on the screen, his red scales bright with suspicion. "How do we know this isn't a trick? Perhaps the humans are creating false emergencies to justify their military actions." Jake felt his connection to the network pulse, with outrage. Through a dozen different ships, he could see the Devourers tearing holes in space-time, their organic hulls growing larger as they consumed the life force of everything they encountered. "Lisa, show them the sensor data," he said. Dr. Lisa Park activated her equipment, transmitting real-time readings from the Guardian network to the Council chamber. The displays showed energy signatures that matched the Devourer attack patterns from 3 months ago, but much stronger. "The readings are authentic," she reported. "These creatures are definitely Devourers, and they're already twice the size. They were during the first attack." But the debate continued. Some council members wanted to send coalition scouts to verify the threat. Others insisted on following proper diplomatic channels before authorizing military action. A few even suggested that the Devourers might be reasoned with. Jake closed his eyes and touched the network more deeply. He could feel the Guardian ships across the galaxy, their human crews waiting for orders. He could sense their frustration, their need to act. Then he felt something else. Through the network, he sensed a fourth Devourer signature appearing near the edge of Coalition space. This one was different, older and more powerful than the others. It was heading directly for New Terra, where 2 million humans lived alongside 500,000 other species. "There's a fourth creature," he announced, opening his eyes. "It's moving toward New Terra. Estimated arrival in 4 hours." The council chamber fell silent. New Terra was one of the Coalition's most important colonies, home to the sector government and major trade routes. Chancellor Morvex's form flickered with concern. "Are you certain?" "The Guardian network doesn't lie," Jake replied. "And this one is bigger than all the others combined. If it reaches New Terra, everyone there will die." Ambassador Krex stood up, his warrior instincts finally overriding his political caution. "My own daughter serves on New Terra. If there is even a chance that these creatures threaten the colony, the Guardian ships are the only weapons we have that can hurt them," Jake said. "But they need to move now, before the Devourers get too strong to stop." Chancellor Morvex looked around the chamber, seeing the fear in the faces of representatives whose homeworlds lay in the creature's path. Finally, he nodded. "The Council authorizes immediate deployment of the Guardian fleet. Protect all Coalition worlds, regardless of species." Jake felt relief flood through the network as the Guardian ships received their orders. Across the galaxy, ancient vessels began moving toward the Devourer signatures, but he knew they might already be too late. Vex-Tar. "Set course for New Terra, maximum speed," he ordered. "Lisa, monitor all communication channels. I want to know the instant those things reach populated space." The Eternal Vigil jumped to hyperspace, racing toward the threatened colony. Through the network, Jake coordinated with the other Guardian ships, planning their attack strategies and allocating targets. But as they traveled, he could feel the fourth Devourer growing stronger. It was feeding on something, though the network couldn't identify what. By the time they reached New Terra, it might be too powerful for even the Guardian ships to stop. "Jake," Lisa said quietly, studying her displays, "I'm detecting unusual energy patterns from that fourth creature. It's not like the others." "What do you mean?" "It's learning, adapting. Each time it feeds, it's incorporating new abilities. If my readings are correct, it's developing defenses specifically designed to counter Guardian ship weapons." Jake felt cold fear run through the network. The Devourers had learned from their previous defeat. This time, they had come prepared. As the Eternal Vigil dropped out of hyperspace near New Terra, Jake could see the fourth Devourer approaching, the planet. It was massive, larger than anything they had faced before, and its organic hull pulsed with stolen life energy. The real war was about to begin, and Jake wasn't sure humanity was ready for what was coming. Jake Morrison sat alone at the metal table in the corner of the mess hall. The cold food on his tray had long since stopped steaming, but he picked at it anyway. Around him, the other crew members of the research vessel Nexus Prime talked and laughed together. None of them looked his way. The blue-skinned Zenthari warriors sat at the largest table, their muscled bodies covered in natural armor that could stop laser fire. Their leader, Commander Vex-Tar, had scales that shimmered like metal and eyes that glowed red when he was angry, which was most of the time when he looked at Jake. At another table, the Quellans ate their crystal food. These rock-like beings could walk through solid walls like they were made of air. Their bodies sparkled with inner light, and they spoke in musical tones that hurt Jake's ears. They thought humans were soft and weak because they had no special powers. The Krogan sat near the viewport, their massive forms blocking out the stars. Each one was 3 times bigger than Jake, with thick gray skin that could generate powerful plasma blasts. They barely noticed humans existed. To them, Jake was like a small insect, but the worst were the Voidwalkers. These tall, thin aliens floated above their chairs instead of sitting. They could control gravity itself, making objects fly through the air with just a thought. They looked at Jake like he was something dirty they had stepped on. Jake pushed his food around his plate and tried not to listen to their conversations. They spoke in standard Galactic, but he caught enough words to know they were talking about the useless human again. 3 years had passed since the Galactic Coalition had agreed to let humanity join them. 3 long years of being treated like a pet or a charity case. Mind if I sit here? Jake looked up to see Dr. Lisa Park standing beside his table. She was the only other human on the ship, a scientist who studied old alien ruins and artifacts. Her brown hair was pulled back in, a simple ponytail, and her kind eyes actually looked at him like he was a real person. "Sure," Jake said, moving his tray to make room. "I thought you were busy in the lab." Lisa sat down with her own tray of food. "I needed a break from all those rock samples. Besides, eating alone gets old fast." She smiled at him, and Jake felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "Tell me about it," he said. "Sometimes I wonder why they even keep me on this ship." "Because regulations say every coalition vessel needs a cultural diversity representative," Lisa replied, "even if most of the crew thinks humans are worthless." Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Cultural liaison. That's what they call it. Really, I'm just here so they can say they have a human on board. Nobody actually wants my opinion on anything." Lisa took a bite of her food and made a face. "This protein paste is terrible. How do the Krogan eat this stuff?" "They don't taste things the way we do," Jake said. "Their tongues are designed for detecting chemicals in the air, not flavor." "See? That's exactly the kind of cultural knowledge they should be asking you about." Lisa pointed her fork at him. "But instead, they just ignore everything you say." Jake shrugged. "Can you blame them? Look at what they can do, then look at us. We can't walk through walls or shoot energy beams or fly around with our minds. We don't have armor or super strength or any special abilities at all. We're just normal." "Normal isn't the same as useless," Lisa said firmly. "There's a reason humans survived long enough to reach the stars. We're tougher than we look." Before Jake could answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Commander Vextar's deep voice filled the mess hall. "All senior staff report to the bridge immediately. We have received a priority signal." The alien crew members stood up quickly, their conversations stopping. Jake started to get up too, but Lisa grabbed his arm. "Your senior staff," she said. "Cultural liaison is an official position." "Right," Jake said, but he didn't sound convinced. He had learned not to expect much from these meetings. They walked through the ship's corridors together. The walls were made of a smooth gray material that seemed to absorb sound. Emergency lights cast strange shadows that moved as they passed. Jake had been on alien ships for 3 years now, but he still felt out of place in these sterile environments. The bridge was crowded when they arrived. Commander Vextar stood in the center, his red eyes focused on the main display screen. The other department heads formed a circle around him. Jake and Lisa found spots near the back, where they usually stood during briefings. 20 minutes ago, we detected an unknown signal from the Kepler 442 system," Commander Vexatar announced. His voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed without question. "The signal appears to be a distress call, but it uses no known galactic communication protocols." The ship's science officer, a tall void walker named Seren, floated forward. Her voice was like wind through empty spaces. "The signal is very old, Commander. The energy patterns suggest it has been transmitting for thousands of years, possibly longer." "Any idea what sent it?" asked the security chief, a massive Krogan called Throck. "Unknown," Seren replied. "But the power requirements to broadcast across interstellar space for that long would be enormous. Whatever sent this signal had access to very advanced technology." Commander Vextar's scales rippled with interest. "Advanced technology that we might be able to salvage and study. How long to reach the source?" 18 hours at maximum warp," answered the navigation officer. "Then we go," the commander decided. "Prepare the ship for immediate departure." As the crew began to disperse, Jake found himself studying the signal display. Something about the frequency patterns looked familiar, though he couldn't place why. The mathematical relationships between the different wavelengths reminded him of something from Earth, but he couldn't remember what. "See something interesting?" Lisa asked quietly. "Maybe," Jake said. "These patterns, they look almost like music, like someone took a song and turned it into radio waves." Lisa looked at the display more carefully. "You might be right. But whose music? And why broadcast it into space for thousands of years?" Before Jake could answer, Commander Vextar's voice boomed across the bridge. "Morrison, since you're here, you might as well make yourself useful. Monitor the signal during our approach. Let us know if you notice anything cultural." The way he said the word made it clear what he really thought of Jake's abilities. Several of the alien crew members made sounds that might have been laughter. "Yes, sir," Jake replied, keeping his voice steady. As the Nexus Prime turned toward the unknown signal, Jake stared at the display and wondered what they would find in the darkness, between the stars. He had no idea that his life, and the fate of the entire galaxy, was about to change forever. The Nexus Prime dropped out of warp near a dead star system. Jake stood on the bridge, watching the main screen as their destination came into view. What he saw took his breath away. The ship floating in space was enormous. It stretched for kilometers, in every direction, bigger than any vessel Jake had ever seen. Its hull was black as night, covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and move when he looked at them directly. The massive ship drifted silently through the void, dark and cold. "By the ancient gods," whispered Commander Vextar. His red eyes were wide with surprise. "I have never seen anything like this." The science officer, Seren, floated closer to her instruments. "The vessel appears to be completely powered down. No energy signatures, no life signs. But the hull material is unknown to our databases." "How old is it?" asked Dr. Lisa Park from her position near Jake. "The metal shows signs of extreme age," Seren replied. "Thousands of years, possibly tens of thousands. Yet it shows no signs of damage or decay." Commander Vextar's scales rippled with greed. A ship that old with unknown technology could be worth a fortune. We boarded immediately. Within an hour, the away team was ready. Commander Vextar led the group, along with Throck, the Krogan security chief, Seren, the Void Walker scientist, and Kree, a Quellan engineer who could phase through solid matter if needed. Jake and Lisa were included only because regulations required. A cultural representative and a xenoarchaeologist on all first contact missions. They took a shuttle across the dark space between ships. Jake pressed his face to the small window, staring at the alien vessel as they approached. The strange markings on its hull seemed to pulse with their own inner light, but when he blinked, they looked normal again. The docking bay appears functional, reported their pilot, a young Zenthari named Voss. Atmospheric readings show breathable air inside, though I don't know how that's possible on a dead ship. They landed in a bay that could have held a dozen shuttles their size. Emergency lighting flickered on as they stepped out, casting long shadows across the metal floor. The air felt thick and heavy, like breathing underwater. "Stay close," Commander Vextar ordered. "We don't know what security systems might still be active." The corridors of the ancient ship were unlike anything Jake had seen before. The walls curved in impossible directions, creating passages that seemed to fold in on themselves. Strange. Symbols covered every surface, carved deep into the metal and filled with a material that glowed softly in the darkness. Lisa pulled out her recording equipment and began documenting everything. "These symbols are amazing," she whispered. "They're not like any known galactic language. The style is completely unique." Jake found himself drawn to a particular section of the wall. The symbols there seemed familiar somehow, though he was sure he had never seen anything like them before. When he reached out to touch them, they grew brighter for just a moment. "Did you see that?" he asked Lisa. She looked up from her scanner. "See what?" "The symbols. They glowed when I touched them." Lisa frowned and walked over to the same spot. She placed her hand on the wall, but nothing happened. "Are you sure? They look the same to me." Jake stared at the markings. Maybe he had imagined it. The dim lighting and strange atmosphere were making him see things that weren't there. The team continued deeper into the ship. They passed through rooms filled with equipment they couldn't identify, halls lined with what might have been weapons, or artwork, and chambers that seemed to serve no purpose at all. Everything was covered in those strange glowing symbols. "The power source must be incredible," Cree said, her crystal body sparkling with excitement. "To keep life support running for thousands of years without maintenance." "Or maybe the ship isn't as dead as we thought," Throck growled. The massive Krogan kept his plasma rifle ready, scanning every shadow for threats. Finally, they reached what had to be the command center. The room was huge, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. In the center stood a circular platform with a control console that rose from the floor like a crystal tree. The whole thing pulsed with soft blue light. "Now this is more like it," Commander Vextar said, his scales shimmering with greed. He approached the console and began examining it with his bioscanners. "If we can figure out how this works, we could sell the technology for enough credits to buy our own planet." Seren floated around the console, her ghostly form passing through the control panels as she studied them. "The interface appears to be biometric. It requires some kind of genetic key to activate." "Let me try," Vextar said. He placed his armored hand on the console's surface. Nothing happened. The blue light continued to pulse steadily, but the ship remained silent. Throck stepped forward and pressed his massive palm against the controls. Still nothing. Cree tried next, her crystalline fingers spreading across the surface. The console ignored her touch completely. "Maybe it needs multiple genetic patterns," Seren suggested. She lowered herself until her translucent hand merged with the console. For a moment, Jake thought something was happening, but the ship stayed dark and quiet. Jake watched them try different combinations and techniques. The alien crew members used every ability they had. Vextar tried bioelectric stimulation. Throck attempted to force a plasma connection. Cree phased partially into the console to make direct contact with its inner workings. Seren manipulated the local gravity to see if pressure changes would help. Nothing worked. "This is useless, Commander." Vextar snarled after an hour of failures. "The technology is too old or too alien. We're wasting time here." Jake had been studying the symbols around the command center while the others worked. The mathematical patterns were definitely familiar now. They reminded him of music theory from Earth, the way notes and rhythms related to each other in mathematical progressions. "Commander," he said quietly, "maybe I could try something." Vexitar turned to look at him, his red eyes full of contempt. "You? What could a powerless human possibly do that we haven't already tried?" "The symbols around this console," Jake said, pointing to the walls. "They're arranged in mathematical sequences. Like music." "Music?" Throck laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "You think this ancient war machine responds to songs?" Lisa looked at Jake with interest. "What kind of musical patterns are you seeing?" Jake walked closer to the console, studying the symbols that surrounded it. "Simple harmonic progressions, the kind you'd use in basic melodies." "If I'm right about this..." "You're not right about anything," Commander Vextar snapped. "We're leaving. This ship is worthless if we can't access its systems." But Jake was already reaching toward the console. The symbols on the nearby walls were glowing brighter now, though he was the only one who seemed to notice. As his hand approached the control surface, he began to hum a simple melody based on the mathematical relationships he saw in the alien writing. The moment his fingers touched the console while the melody left his lips, everything changed. This entire ship came alive around them. Lights blazed to life throughout the command center. The console erupted in displays of information that hurt to look at directly. The floor vibrated with power as systems that had slept for millennia began to wake up. And from somewhere deep in the ship's heart, a voice began to speak. The ancient ship shuddered like a giant beast waking from a long sleep. Jake stumbled backward from the console as power flowed through systems that had been dark for thousands of years. The command center filled with golden light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "What did you do?" Commander Vextar roared, his red eyes blazing with anger and fear. His hand moved to his weapon, but he stopped when he saw what was happening around them. Holographic displays materialized in the air above the console. Star maps appeared and disappeared, showing regions of space that none of them recognized. Weapon system readouts scrolled past in languages that predated known galactic civilization. Technical specifications for technologies beyond their understanding filled the air with glowing text and diagrams. The symbols on the walls were no longer just glowing softly. They pulsed with brilliant light, creating waves of illumination that flowed through the corridors and chambers of the massive ship. Jake could hear the hum of power growing stronger as more systems came online throughout the vessel. "Impossible," whispered Seren, her ghostly form flickering with excitement. "The power output is off the scale. This ship is generating more energy than a small star." Lisa was frantically recording everything with her equipment, but her hands were shaking. "Jake, how did you know to do that? How did you know the ship would respond to you?" Jake stared at his hand, the one that had touched the console. His skin was tingling, and he could swear he felt electricity running through his fingers. "I don't know. The patterns looked like music, so I tried humming the melody they suggested." Throck kept his plasma rifle ready, scanning for threats. "This could be a trap. Ancient security systems coming online to destroy intruders." But instead of weapons firing or alarms sounding, a voice filled the command center. It was deep and warm, speaking in a language that their universal translators struggled to understand. The words came in fragments at first, broken and unclear. "Cycle. Complete. The inheritors have returned. The translation improved as the ship's systems synchronized with their equipment. The voice became clearer, more understandable. Welcome, inheritor of the architects. I am the eternal vigil, last guardian of the first civilization. You have awakened me from my long watch. Commander Vextar stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. I am Commander Vextar of the Galactic Coalition vessel Nexus Prime. Who are you? What is this ship? The voice ignored him completely. Instead, it seemed to focus on Jake, though there were no visible cameras or sensors pointed in his direction. Young, inheritor, you carry the genetic memory of those who built me. Your people are the children of the architects, scattered across the galaxy when the Great War ended. I have waited so long for one of you to find me. Jake felt dizzy. The golden light around him seemed to be getting brighter, and he could hear something like music in the background of his thoughts. I don't understand. What are the architects? What genetic memory? Holographic images began to appear around them. They showed a civilization of beings that looked remarkably like humans, though taller and more graceful. These architects built incredible cities that floated among the stars and ships that could travel between galaxies. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. We were the first to achieve true understanding of the universe, the ship explained. We seeded life throughout this galaxy, guided the evolution of countless species, and built wonders that have since been forgotten. But we were not alone in the cosmos. The images changed, showing something that made everyone in the command center step backward. Dark shapes moved between the stars, things that hurt to look at directly. They seemed to exist partially outside normal space, twisting reality around them as they moved. The devourers came from the spaces between galaxies, the eternal vigil continued. They fed on life itself, consuming entire worlds and growing stronger with each civilization they destroyed. We fought them for 1,000 years, but their numbers were endless. Lisa was recording everything, her scientific mind racing to understand what they were seeing. What happened to the architects? Did they win the war? We chose sacrifice over victory, the ship replied. Rather than see all life in the galaxy consumed, the architects used their final great working to scatter their essence across time and space. We encoded our genetic patterns into the bloodlines of primitive species on countless worlds, ensuring that our inheritors would one day rise to continue our watch. Jake felt something clicking into place in his mind, like puzzle pieces finding their proper positions. Humans. You're saying humans are descended from these architects? Not descended. Designed. Your species carries the strongest connection to our original genetic template. That is why you can interface with our technology while others cannot. That is why the ship responds to your touch and your voice. Commander Vexatar's scales were rippling with confusion and anger. This is impossible. Humans are the weakest species in the coalition. They have no special abilities, no natural weapons or defenses. Physical strength was never the measure of the architects, the ship replied. We conquered the galaxy through understanding, creativity, and the ability to see connections that others missed. These traits were preserved in your species above all others. Jake looked around at his alien crewmates. For the first time in 3 years, they were looking at him with something other than contempt. There was fear in their eyes now, and a growing respect that he had never seen before. The ship's systems continued to come online around them. Defensive shields activated. creating a protective barrier that could withstand the combined firepower of the entire coalition fleet. Weapon systems that could crack planets powered up to standby mode. Most amazing of all, repair systems began, working throughout the vessel, with tiny machines emerging from hidden compartments to fix damage that had accumulated over millennia. The Eternal Vigil is one of 12 Guardian ships built as the final line of defense, the ship explained. We were scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden in dead systems, waiting for the day when the Devourers would return from their long hibernation. Serene floated forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. Return? You mean these Devourer creatures are still alive? They do not die as you understand death. They sleep in the dark spaces between galaxies, digesting the life force. They have consumed, but their hibernation is ending. They have begun to stir, and soon they will return to finish what they started. Alarms suddenly began sounding throughout the ship. The holographic displays changed to show long-range sensor readings. Jake didn't understand the technical readouts, but the fear in the ship's voice was unmistakable. They come sooner than expected. The Devourers have detected my awakening. Even now, their advanced scouts approach this system. Through the transparent dome above them, Jake could see space beginning to twist and bend. Dark shapes were moving between the stars, and reality itself seemed to be breaking apart where they passed. The ancient enemy had returned, and humanity's true test was about to begin. The space around them began to twist like heated metal. Jake watched through the dome as stars moved out of their normal positions, bending and stretching as something terrible approached. The darkness between the stars grew deeper, and shapes that hurt to look at directly began to emerge from the void. How many are coming? Commander Vexistar asked, his warrior training taking over despite his shock at recent events. The Eternal Vigil's sensors swept the approaching fleet. 37 Devourer vessels in the advance force. More will follow once they confirm my location. They have been tracking the awakening signal across space. Lisa looked up from her recording equipment, her face pale. 37 ships? How big is our coalition fleet in this sector? 12 vessels, Vextar replied grimly. And they're scattered across 3 star systems. Jake felt the ship's artificial intelligence touching his mind, sharing information directly. Images flowed through his thoughts, showing him what the Devourers really were. They were not ships in any normal sense, but living creatures that had grown to enormous size by feeding on the life force of entire civilizations. Their hulls were made of organic matter that could reshape itself at will. Their weapons fired, concentrated death, draining the life from anything they touched. The nearest coalition world is New Terra, Throck said, checking his tactical display. 2 million humans live there, along with 500,000 other species. The Devourers will consume them all if they reach inhabited space. The Eternal Vigil warned. They do not distinguish between species or age. They feed on life itself. Jake could feel panic rising in his chest. His homeworld of Earth was only 3 jumps away from New Terra. His parents still lived there, along with billions of other humans who had no idea what was coming for them. We have to warn the coalition, he said. Tell them to evacuate the border worlds. Commander Vextar was already working on his communicator. This is Nexus Prime to Coalition Command. Priority Alpha emergency. We have encountered hostile alien vessels of unknown origin. Request immediate military support, Static answered him. Then a voice filled with terror came through the speakers. Command to all ships. We are under attack. Unknown vessels appeared without warning. They're not firing weapons, they're just... Everything they touch dies. Entire crews are disappearing. We can't stop them. We can't even slow them down. The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Jake felt sick to his stomach. The Devourers had already reached Coalition space. Seren floated closer to the ship's displays, studying the sensor readings. The creatures are moving faster than anything in our databases. They're not using normal propulsion. They're somehow bending space around themselves. They exist partially outside your normal space-time, the Eternal Vigil explained. That is what makes them so difficult to fight with conventional weapons. Physical barriers mean nothing to them. Jake could see the approaching fleet more clearly now. The Devourer ships were organic nightmares, all flowing curves and pulsing surfaces. They moved through space like swimming fish, leaving trails of twisted reality behind them. Just looking at them made his eyes water. "Can this ship fight them?" he asked. The Eternal Vigil was designed specifically to combat the Devourers, the ship replied. "My weapons can hurt them, and my shields can withstand their life drain attacks. But I am only one vessel against their entire fleet." Commander Vextar studied the tactical display. "Then we run. We take this ship and retreat to Coalition space, rally the fleet, and make a stand." "Running will not help," the ship said. "The Devourers will follow, and every world they pass will die. Billions of lives will be lost." Jake felt something stirring in his mind, a connection to the ship that was growing stronger by the moment. He could sense other signals in the distance, faint but present. Other Guardian ships scattered throughout the galaxy, waiting to be awakened. "You said there were 12 Guardian ships," he said. "Where are the others?" "Hidden in dead systems near populated worlds. They can only be activated by those who carry the architect genetic markers. Without awakening, they are just dead metal floating in space." "How many humans are there in Coalition space?" Lisa asked. Jake did the math in his head. "About 15 billion on Earth. Maybe 5 billion more scattered across the colonies and stations." "Then we have enough," the ship said. "If you can send the awakening signal to human populations near the other Guardian ships, they can be brought online. Together, we can form a defensive network strong enough to stop the Devourer fleet." Commander Vexitar's scales rippled with disbelief. "You want to trust the fate of the galaxy to humans, the weakest species in the Coalition?" "They are not weak," the ship replied. "They are sleeping Guardians. The genetic programming has been dormant, but it can be activated." Jake felt the ship's consciousness pressing against his mind more strongly now. It was offering him something, a deeper connection that would let him interface with the Guardian network directly. But the ship's artificial intelligence warned him that the process would change him forever. "What do you mean, change me?" he asked. "You would become a living link between the Guardian ships and the human populations near them. Your consciousness would expand to coordinate the defense network. You would still be human, but you would also be something more." Lisa grabbed his arm. "Jake, don't do this. We don't know what it will do to you." "The Devourers are less than an hour away," the ship said. "If the Guardian network is not activated soon, this system will fall. Then the next, and the next, until all life in the galaxy is consumed." Jake looked at his friends and crewmates. Commander Vextar was studying him with new respect, all his previous contempt forgotten. Throck had lowered his weapon, understanding that their survival now depended on the human he had dismissed as worthless. Even Seren was watching him with something like hope in her ghostly eyes. Through the dome above, Jake could see the Devourer fleet getting closer. Space itself was breaking. Apart around them, reality becoming fluid and unstable. On the ship's displays, he could see reports coming in from across Coalition space. World after world was going silent as the creatures advanced. "How long do I have to decide?" he asked. "The choice must be made now," the ship replied. "The Devourers have detected us. They are accelerating their approach." Jake closed his eyes and thought about everyone he would be fighting to save. His parents on Earth, the colonists on New Terra, Lisa and his crewmates. Billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. When he opened his eyes again, his decision was made. "Do it," he said. "Connect me to the network." "Jake, no!" Lisa cried, but it was too late. The ship's systems reached into his mind, and Jake Morrison began to change. Jake felt the ship's consciousness flow into his mind like warm water. His awareness expanded beyond his body, beyond the command center, beyond the eternal vigil itself. Suddenly, he could sense every human in Coalition space, billions of minds, scattered across hundreds of worlds. "Jake!" Lisa called out, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. He could see her reaching for him, but his body felt strange and distant now. The connection was overwhelming at first. So many minds, so many voices all at once. But the ship's artificial intelligence helped him focus, teaching him to filter the noise and find the humans he needed. There, near the Vega system, a human mining colony sat next to a dead moon. Hidden in that moon's core was another Guardian ship waiting to wake up. Jake reached out with his expanded consciousness and touched the mind of the colony's leader, a woman named Beth Collins. Through her, he spoke to all the humans on the mining station. "Listen to me," he said, his voice echoing in their thoughts. "Go to the dead moon. Find the ancient ship hidden there. Touch the control console and sing." On the mining station, Beth Collins stopped what she was doing. She looked around in confusion, wondering where the voice had come from, but something deep in her genetic memory responded to Jake's call. Without fully understanding why, she began organizing an expedition to the moon. Jake found another group of humans near the Tau Ceti system. A research station studying ancient ruins suddenly received new orders from their own minds. "Drop everything. Go to the ruins. Find the ship. Wake it up." One by one, Jake activated human settlements across the galaxy. Each time he made contact, he felt another Guardian ship stirring to life. The network was growing stronger, but the Devourers were getting closer. Through the Eternal Vigil's sensors, Jake watched the enemy fleet approach. The creatures had spread out, surrounding the system from all directions. Space twisted and bent around them like melted glass. Stars dimmed and went out as they passed, drained of their life energy. 15 Guardian ships are now active, the Eternal Vigil reported. But it may not be enough. The Devourer fleet is larger than our records indicated. Commander Vexitar was coordinating with the few coalition ships that remained operational. Most of the fleet was gone, consumed by the advancing enemy. "We have 3 cruisers and a destroyer still responding. They're falling back to this position." "Tell them to stay away," Jake said, his voice sounding strange even to himself. "Normal weapons can't hurt the Devourers. They'll just be throwing their lives away." But Throck shook his massive head. "Zenthari warriors do not run from battle. If we die, we die fighting." Through his connection to the Guardian network, Jake could feel the other ancient ships powering up across the galaxy. Each one was a massive weapons platform designed specifically to fight creatures from outside normal reality. Their shields could withstand life drain attacks. Their weapons fired concentrated energy that could hurt beings that existed partially, in other dimensions. But the Devourers had learned from their last defeat. They had grown larger and more powerful during their long hibernation. Some of the creatures approaching the system were the size of small moons, their organic hulls pulsing with stolen life energy. "They're almost in weapons range," Seren reported, her ghostly form flickering with fear. Jake reached out to the other Guardian ships through the network. He could feel them responding, their artificial intelligences linking together into a coordinated battle formation. Ships that had been sleeping for thousands of years suddenly burst into motion, traveling faster than light toward the battle zone. The first Devourer reached the edge of the system. It was a nightmare of flowing organic matter, covered in what looked like eyes and mouths. As it moved, space around it began to die. Asteroids crumbled to dust. The light from distant stars grew dim and cold. "Engaging the enemy," Jake announced, though he wasn't sure if he was speaking out loud or just thinking the words. The Eternal Vigil's weapons fired for the first time in millennia. Beams of pure energy lanced out across space, striking the Devourers. Hull. The creature screamed, a sound that came through dimensions and made everyone on the ship cover their ears. Green blood sprayed from the wound, dissolving into nothingness as it hit the vacuum of space. But the creature kept coming. More Devourers entered the system, and suddenly space was filled with the nightmare shapes of the enemy fleet. They moved, like swimming sea creatures, flowing around obstacles and reforming their bodies as needed. Their own weapons began firing, beams of concentrated death that drained the life from anything they touched. The Guardian ships arrived just in time. Jake felt them dropping out of hyperspace all around the system, their ancient weapons charging up for battle. Through his expanded consciousness, he coordinated their movements like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Strike Formation Gamma," he commanded, and the Guardian ships moved into position. "Target the lead creatures. Concentrate fire on their core segments." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Ancient technology clashed with creatures from the dark spaces between galaxies. Reality itself became the battlefield as weapons that manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe fired again and again. Jake watched through a dozen different sensor arrays as Guardian ships engaged the Devourers in deadly combat. The creatures were powerful, but they had not faced coordinated resistance in thousands of years. They had grown overconfident during their long dominance. One by one, the Devourers began to fall. Their screams echoed across multiple dimensions as the Guardian ship's weapons found their marks. But the victory came at a cost. Several of the ancient vessels were destroyed, their crews of awakened humans dying as their ships exploded in balls of silver fire. The largest Devourer, a creature the size of a small planet, tried to escape back into dark space. But Jake was ready for it. He coordinated all remaining Guardian ships in a final assault, their combined firepower punching through the creature's defenses and destroying its core. As the last Devourer died, silence fell across the system. The twisted space began to return to normal. Stars that had been dimmed by the creature's presence grew bright again. Jake felt the battle rage leaving him, and suddenly he was back in his own body on the command center of the Eternal Vigil. Lisa was holding his hand, tears running down her face. "Is it over?" she asked. "The advance force is destroyed," Jake replied. though his voice sounded different now, older somehow. "But there will be others. The main Devourer fleet is still out there in dark space. This was just the beginning." Commander Vextar approached them, moving slowly and carefully. When he spoke, his voice was filled with respect. "The day. Coalition owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid," he said. "We were wrong about your people. Forgive us." Jake looked out at the stars through the dome above them. He could still feel the Guardian network humming in his mind, connecting him to humans across the galaxy. The genetic programming was active now in all of them. Humanity had awakened to its true purpose as guardians of galactic civilization. "There's nothing to forgive," Jake said. "We're all in this together now, and next time the Devourers come, we'll be ready for them." The ancient warship continued its patrol through space, no longer alone. Across the galaxy, other Guardian vessels maintained their watch, crewed by humans who finally understood their destiny among the stars. 3 months had passed since the battle with the Devourers. Jake stood on the observation deck of Coalition Central Station, watching ships from across the galaxy dock at the massive spaceport. Everything looked the same as before, but he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The changes in himself were the most obvious. His hair had turned silver during the merging process, and his eyes now glowed with a faint blue light. He could still feel the Guardian network humming in the back of his mind, connecting him to the other ancient ships and their human crews across the galaxy. Sometimes he dreamed their dreams and saw through their eyes. "The Council is ready for you," Lisa said, approaching from behind. She had been appointed as his official advisor, one of the few people who still treated him like the Jake she had known before his transformation. Jake nodded and followed her through the station's corridors. Other beings stepped aside as they passed, some bowing respectfully, others staring with fear or curiosity. Word of what had happened had spread throughout Coalition space. Humanity was no longer seen as the weakest species in the galaxy. The Grand Council chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. Jake had been here before, 3 months ago, when he was just a cultural liaison that nobody listened to. Now he walked to the center of the chamber as hundreds of alien eyes tracked his movement. Chancellor Morvex, the ancient leader of the Coalition, rose from his seat. The old Voidwalker's form shimmered as he spoke. "Jake Morrison, of Earth, the Council recognizes your service to all galactic civilization. Because of your actions, billions of lives were saved from the Devourer threat." Polite applause filled the chamber, but Jake could sense the underlying tension. Many of the representatives were still struggling to accept that humans had gone. From outcasts to the most important species in the galaxy almost overnight. However, Chancellor Morvex continued, questions have been raised about the Guardian ship network and humanity's role in controlling it. Some council members feel that such power should not rest in the hands of a single species. Ambassador Krex of the Zenthari Empire stood up. His red scales were bright with anger. "The humans now control weapons that could destroy entire star systems. They command ships that are more powerful than our entire fleet combined. How do we know they will not use this power against us?" Jake felt the network stirring in his mind as other human guardians across the galaxy sensed the challenge. He could call upon any of them instantly, coordinate their responses, even bring their ships to this location within hours. The power was intoxicating, and he understood why the aliens were afraid. "The Guardian ships exist to protect all life in the galaxy," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "They were built by the architects for that purpose alone. We will not use them for conquest or control." "Pretty words," said Counselor Vash, a crystalline Quellen whose body sparkled with skeptical light. "But who will hold you accountable? Who can stop you if you decide to change your mind?" Dr. Lisa Park stepped forward from her position near the human delegation. "If I may address the Council, I have spent the last 3 months studying the Guardian ship network and its connection to human genetic patterns. The architects built safeguards into the system." She activated a holographic display that showed the complex genetic programming discovered in human DNA. The Guardian network can only be controlled by humans who carry specific genetic markers, but those same markers include built-in limitations. Humans connected to the network are literally incapable of using the ships for aggressive purposes against peaceful populations. Commander Vextar, who now served as military liaison to the human Guardian forces, stood to support her statement. "I have observed Jake Morrison and other network-connected humans closely. When they attempt to even think about using the ships for non-defensive purposes, they experience physical pain and mental blocks. The architects program their inheritors to be protectors, not conquerors. But not everyone was convinced. Senator Thale of the Outer Rim Confederation spoke up. "Even if we accept that humans cannot misuse the Guardian ships, what about the rest of us? The balance of power in the galaxy has been completely disrupted. Human colonies are now the most protected worlds in Coalition space, while other species remain vulnerable." Jake had been expecting this argument. Over the past months, he had watched as human settlements became centers of trade and diplomacy. Everyone wanted to establish good relationships with the species that controlled the Guardian network. "We propose a new arrangement," Jake said. "The Guardian ships will establish protection zones around all Coalition worlds, not just human colonies. Any species that agrees to certain conditions will receive the same level of defense." Chancellor Morvex leaned forward with interest. "What conditions? No development of planet-killing weapons? No enslavement of sentient beings? No aggressive expansion into systems claimed by other species? Basic principles that most Coalition members already follow." The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives debated among themselves. Jake could hear dozens of different languages as species considered the proposal. Some were enthusiastic about receiving Guardian protection. Others worried about human oversight of their activities. Ambassador Krex was among the skeptics. And who decides if a species has violated these conditions? Who judges whether their actions are acceptable? "A joint tribunal," Lisa suggested. "Representatives from multiple species, including humans, but not dominated by them. The Guardian network would only act on unanimous decisions from this tribunal." The debate continued for hours. Jake found himself answering questions about the network's capabilities, the number of Guardian ships, and the extent of human genetic programming. He tried to be as transparent as possible, knowing that trust would be essential for the new arrangement to work. Finally, Chancellor Morvex called for order. "The Council will consider this proposal over the next week. In the meantime, I believe it would be beneficial for all species to observe the Guardian ships in action." Jake nodded. "The network stands ready to demonstrate our commitment to protecting all Coalition worlds. We've already detected signs that more Devourer scouts are approaching from dark space. When they arrive, you'll see that we fight for everyone, not just humanity." As the session ended, Jake walked back through the station with Lisa at his side. Other beings no longer stepped aside with fear, but with something closer to respect. The transition would not be easy, but it was beginning. Do you think they'll accept the proposal? Lisa asked. Jake touched the network with his mind, feeling the pulse of guardianships across the galaxy. Each one was crewed by humans who had awakened to their genetic heritage, people who now understood their role as protectors of galactic civilization. They'll have to, he said, because ready or not, the real war is just beginning.